better than normal, so
Yeah.
probably.
Okay. So welcome to the package maintenance team meeting for the Node.js project for September 8th, 2020. We'll follow the agenda, which was in issue number 405 in the package maintenance repo. But before we get started, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share? Okay, no announcements this week, so let's move on to the issues tag for the agenda. The first one is number 404, create PKG. Just take a look at that, see who opened that one. So I guess, Darcy, you opened that. Do you want to take us through that one?
Yeah, so almost, oh my goodness, almost a year ago, I think, maybe less than that, I came upon the create PKG package, which was sort of dormant. And I know that there was discussions being had about sports or the sport JSON sort of schema, and at that time, we had drafted, or there was a draft of what was going to go into that, and to try to get some traction around that, or other kind of package defaults, or defaults that and standards that we thought would be good for the community to adopt. I wanted to try to find a way for us to decouple and not be blocking, at least from NPM side, not to be a blocker for having this group come up with some recommendations or create tooling that could get some wider adoption in a meaningful way. And so the reason why create a dash PKG is such a good package to be owned by this group and by Node project is that, based on the way that npm runs essentially and initializes packages, is that we use the create dash prefix as sort of an identifier as of a template. And so if somebody were to run npm init pkg, this package would then be run, and then would give you prompts or whatever you would like to essentially start to scaffold or create your package. And so I looked at this as an opportunity for us to use this and create some recommendations around what we thought good defaults were, beyond what exists today. And I know Wes had done a lot of work in this space in the past, writing scaffolding and generator tools. And so we had a brief discussion last week with Roy, when I finally was able to transfer this package to the PKG.js org on npm. So now is officially something we can use and start to publish to for this group. So we had a brief little discussion about what we might want to do and how to go forward. And so I wanted to document essentially the notes from that discussion in that issue. And yeah, so we had a couple of questions initially that Wes had about, sort of what exactly do we want to define, or what would be good to define when running a tool like this. So some defaults obviously is package JSON with some default fields defined, after you've run through some sort of wizard or some sort of command prompt. And then also sort of the secondary and licensing and some other files that you might want. And we can discuss essentially whether or not we think those are useful and what files we should and shouldn't. And there might be people that have strong opinions one way or another about certain files or fields that we want to have defined. And then the sort of secondary aspect to this is also what kind of tooling or how should we disseminate this. And Wes had the good idea of this should be available, and we should provide some sort of programmatic way of people being able to extend this tool so that they could provide their own kind of defaults as well. So this can grow beyond this group. Weston, do you want to add anything?
No, I think you covered it. That was the notes actually covered quite a bit too, which is great. I think could we maybe have these two questions posed to the group and see if what everybody else thinks aligns with what we have in the notes here? Like maybe would that be productive use of our time? Like to quickly down these.
Yeah, so the two questions I'm talking about are actually in there in the doc, and I just documented essentially what we had come to. So the first one is what do we want the scaffold output to include, and the second is sort of what API surface do we want to expose to both users and the folks who want to compose the base generator with their own custom options. So.
Yeah, I just shared the lists that are there if people want to take a look.
So I think we put the one fairly straightforward at the top, which I think is good. I really, after this, I also remembered repo, which did not make it into this.
Right.
So that's probably one, because that's one that I find missing quite often. And when I find it missing, I find it quite annoying.
Because doesn't that one have the advantage that then you can quickly get like issues and stuff like direct, at least for GitHub URLs anyway.
No, yeah. But it works for more than just that, I think, too, doesn't it? Anyway, even if not, just having the repo to find the source code is nice.
I think I don't see it, but one of the things we thought we would be able to merge into there is the support info, right?
So that's kind of, I think Wes mentioned this, like there is a current tool for that, right? The pkg.js/support tool. Isn't that going to be?
It doesn't actually do the creation. Right now it does validation and it'll do a list. It could be then called by this though to do the generation at some point.
Yeah, I think I said in next steps that we might want to update that to be either a consumer of this or
yeah, okay, right. Yeah, got it.
To sort of validate sort of the approach would be and again, Wes had ideas about how we build this so that either something like that, like where maybe we don't want to have it as the baseline default, because again, it's something that we're experimenting or like we want to get traction, but we don't necessarily want to put it into these defaults yet. Maybe is we could have a separate tool, or we can put it into this. I don't know. I'm easy.
So one of the things, if you look at, we have a few listed as contentious, and I think support would probably fit into those. Like how do we show these to users? Because they're in some ways more power user features. And so like if NPM is pushing people to use NPM init PKG, it's effectively the de facto standard, right? Like package initializer, like today it's npm init-y or something. This would be the future where that's what we push people to. In that regard, I feel like some of these more advanced features, extensions, like all these other things that we do want to support, probably will start off just behind flags. So like you probably say something like, -- with support. And then it would ask you some questions about how you do support or something to that effect, where maybe like we have a baseline and then we have all of these other extensions built in and just hidden behind flags. I think things like all the GitHub files, the ones that tie specifically to GitHub APIs, could be a similar one, like -- with GitHub,
I was wondering if maybe something like just a question, do you want to add support info? If you say yes, it asks more questions, otherwise it doesn't.
Yeah, that's great too. Yeah.
Just so that it's kind of like, hey, and that might actually be good to get people to say, oh, well, what is this, right? I'll learn a little bit more about it, but it's not terribly intrusive, right?
Yeah, I just think about, we have the support info. if we put funding behind the same kind of question and the GitHub stuff, like there is a little bit of command or like prompt fatigue, you know, that I know I've seen this with other generators I've used where I'm just like, I don't know now. Go away.
Right.
Just stop asking me so many questions. Give me the basics. And I think, again, we have to look at it through the lens of, if this were to be the default behavior of NPM, does that make sense for everyone? And that's where I think the support info doesn't, because that works only for libraries. App maintainers start with the start with npm init -y, just like package authors do. Like, and that's where I think if we have a lot of these other nice features, having a configuration you can put in your home directory that says, no, I do want to ask these all the time or something is fine. But I think that in general, if we just started with like those top pieces, license, version, you know, main,
Right, the basic stuff.
and then we add the extra stuff on as options or flags or whatever, you know, behind the scenes, because then the power users know about it and they just use it. Anyway, go ahead.
Is kind of to this to your thought about, you know, there's the default set and then you can enable further prompts with further flags. Could it be designed in such a way that in a month, when you know that information, you could run the command with the support flag and it would just patch your package JSON, like, oh, now that you know, okay, hit me with all the questions and, you know, just stick in those 3 or 4 new keys into my package JSON or something. So it's almost like idempotent in a way that's like, you know, you can pick and choose when you want. It doesn't nuke what's ever there, it just, you know, patches on to what's there.
I think that should be considered a requirement. These things are going to change, right? And if we want people to keep up with them, I have seen package initialization tooling fail at the ability to stay up to date in every possible way. I mean, look at all the popular Yeoman generators really just like are really tough at the patching. I think we should set out to do that, because with the package JSON, at least it's pretty easy to do. If you look at like some of the tools offer some really nice like diffing, and you can say like, well, I do want to take that change, or no, ignore this whole file. You know, maybe we can even get more advanced, you know, with that. But anyway, I think the ability to keep up to date with the standards should absolutely be a technical requirement of this.
Just for the minutes, I just pasted a link. Is the PKGS create repo the one that will be used to build this out?
Yeah, so let me maybe also give a quick synopsis of the history that I have on this. I made the package create-package-JSON a while back as a first attempt at the actual implementation for this. I found a couple of things when it came to composition of this stuff. I was trying to follow the Create React app sort of way they did it, because a very successful, scaffolder. Anyway, I found a few things where it was like really boilerplate code, like really boilerplate heavy, like just repetitive stuff over and over. Taking the things that you take from the CLI prompt, from the CLI flags, from yargs, passing them to Inquirer, which then has like, anyway, it just ended up being a ton of glue code that was really hard to manage. So the PKG.js create repo today was just a small abstraction that I pulled out of that, like the create package JSON. I think we just need to delete that code or move it off somewhere else. And then this would be the new thing, which actually, so that's like a tool that you would use in a scaffolding tool to collect the user input. Whereas what I think needs to live there is what we've outlined in this this issue, which is a concrete implementation of a package scaffolding that would then be published as create-pkg in the end. Does that make sense?
Yep.
and whether or not we use what is in the create repo today as the technical underpinnings of the scaffolder or not is totally up for question. I've actually abandoned that and went to, I even changed its focus to be a little bit tighter, which there is a link into what I have evolved to. So, but again, totally optional. If everybody is like, let's just build a yeoman generator, like, I won't push back too hard, but I also don't like yeoman generators. So
a lot for some JSON. One minor observation back to the top of the list is I saw funding under the, I guess, Michael, if you could scroll up a little bit, whoever has
Yep.
this. Yeah, funding is under package JSON, and the funding YAML, are those meant to be different sections that come in at different times, or?
So one is specific to the NPM platform, really, like we're the only, well, it's not specific to us. It's just another piece of metadata to package that there happens to be some support in the sort of tooling that's supported in package JSON. The funding YAML is, and that's the reason why we've said it's a bit more contentious, is because it's only specific to the GitHub platform. Yeah, we tried to identify sort of the fields that we thought would be contentious, or even like when we were kind of discussing it, that we were like, do we really want to do this? Does it overlap? Does it actually make sense? We don't also want to make this like have 1,000 prompts for the user, right? Because then they're not going to actually fill it out. Or it could be potentially there might be a way to set this up so it's like a one-time, user config that, global user config that then gets pulled from once you start your package, right? Your next package. So there could be like maybe a one-time cost for a lot of this stuff, especially something like funding, and might be information that is carried over to each one of your projects. Or similar to maybe licensing, and that might be a good exercise to go through which ones might not have to be, which might be redundant over time. Author, license, things like that might be things that we could find ways to make sure the user isn't prompted for each time. But yeah, that one is those are just used in two different sort of ways.
Context, yeah. I guess that also, now that I'm looking at it, obviously I know that like a code of conduct isn't, or like a contributing file isn't necessarily specific to a code hosting platform, but certainly GitHub adds a lot of nice workflow extensions on top of documents like that. Do we know if, I use Bitbucket at work, so I don't think so, but do Bitbucket or GitLab or anything else try and extend the experience in the sense of like templates or anything like that? Or does it, again, not that a code of conduct would be exclusive to GitHub, but is there a way that we can signal like certain files get an enhanced experience in certain platforms in any way, shape, or form? Like, hey, if you add the contributing, then if you're using GitHub, everybody's going to see this thing every time they open a pull request. I assume the majority of projects are on GitHub, but I'm not sure if it's at least worth some of our time just to scan what other things do. And maybe in a way it's like you could have like the GitHub sub package or something, and it'll prompt you through like, hey, these are cool, like, but I don't want people to only do add and contributing just because of GitHub. It's probably good either way, not to entangle them all together, but just thinking out loud, I guess, on what other code sharing platforms do with files like that, or if they have the equivalent GitHub like pull request template or something.
I think your point is what I would like to boil that down to is, should we have tight coupling with popular platforms or something like for example, tight coupling in my opinion is .github.issue template, or sorry, .github/issue templates. To me, that would be, if we added that, especially if we added it by default, would be considered tight coupling to the GitHub platform. Now that might be 99% of our user base. I don't actually know, but I know I would be a user, and I'm often scaffolding things for internal projects which are not on GitHub. So like, I think your point is good if there's common ground. So now that I see, I think contributors might be contentious as well, only because a lot of folks don't need it. But like, to me, code of conduct, that's just a great thing for us to help push, right? Like we say, hey, follow the code of conduct that the Node project, that the OpenJS Foundation follows. This is a best practice. And that's probably true whether it's an internal project or an external, like an open source project. So
True, maybe this might be the same for like license and contributors. It's like, those are all good things to have. Now I could see, what you're just saying is maybe there's a difference between it's an external or external project. So like an internal flag might disable some of those or something.
Yeah, I would rather go individual and say -- no - contributing, or -- no - code of conduct to opt out, and do that on an individual basis, then try to assume intent, right? Because some people like internal to me, well, I don't know if that flag makes a lot of sense to me, but if it was in there, I would think that would make it a private package. So it'd add private to the package JSON, as well as probably set the license to be closed source. Anyway, I feel like those kind of things get
right.
scary. What does that mean? Because it might mean different things to different people. Anyway, whereas if we just had like, -- license equals closed source and -- no - code of conduct, then we sort of get, you can just piece together whatever flags you might want.
As long as that's like something you only have to set the one time.
Yeah, so actually, when Darcy was saying that, it got me thinking, like, one thing that I could definitely see would be hey, this looks like it's the first time running the generator. Can you answer these upfront questions first? We're going to store these off and reuse them between runs, or something like that would be like, I think, a pretty nice user experience. And then it asks extra prompts, stores those in your home directory or some, shared location. And
maybe,
then,
yeah, maybe we could, I like that idea. Maybe we could have the concept of like a profile, and then the profile is just a preset list of options you've already selected. So you can run the tool past the profile. You'll be like, oh, you've already have values for license, private, this, that, and the other. I'll fill those in, ask you the rest, and then if you add any additional flags on at the end, I'll ask those too. So then you could have, like, on one machine, you have your work profile, your open source profile, and you just kind of pass the right profile to the tool. And it's really just a sum of options. It's nothing more than just.
I think there is some prior art on this as well in most of the generator ecosystems. So we could probably just leverage something that they're already doing.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And for the package JSON, are these just mapped to the defaults from npm init right now, or are there differences? Does it make sense to have differences, or just keep that default profile the same as npm init, if it matters?
Sorry, can you say that again, Owen?
Sure, sorry. Yeah, the bullet, the keys listed under package JSON here, are those do those map one-to-one with the defaults of npm init, or I think there's a couple.
So we have a lot less that we define usually, and we prompt for, and that's kind of why this came about. Like we didn't want to be blocking. Like we kind of like the small defaults that we have today. And we do pull from user config if we can. So like for author, for example, we'll try to get like the git config to define the author. So we'll just immediately like be able to prompt that for you versus having you to like type that in. But yeah, we define a whole lot less. And really the idea here is to try to decouple that, you know, these defaults that we want from and not be a blocker like on our side from you know, especially if we want to be more aggressive with, you know, standardization of certain fields or trying in. This all came about because of sort of the support work and schema that I felt like we were being more of a blocker if we want to get some sort of tooling built and get adoption by the community. You know, I thought there was a perfect way to make almost like a blessed package or a blessed way of getting the defaults that this working group wanted into my you know, to get usage and by the community. And this, I feel, strikes a good balance between sort of looking like it's got, you know, privileged or blessed sort of access into the ecosystem just by the way that you run it with npm, right? So
yeah, it seems nice. Like if you just want really bare bones, there's just npm in it, then this could be, you know, maybe a more I hate to use the term power user version, but like the default profile of this could be, you know, what we see here, which is just kind of like a step above npm init. So at least there's a distinction between npm init and this. And then I like Wes's idea where pretty much everything else is just kind of like a flag on top. So like one flag per option, and then you can just chain them or, you know, just stuff them into a profile and, you know, something like that. This kind of gives you a nice progression from, you know, I'm just using npm init to, you know, I've got the same template I want to use for every open source project, and I can just, you know, put that in a profile based on these options, and, you know, it's just one option, one flag, so it's hopefully pretty easy to, you know, map them. So yeah, it could provide a nice sliding scale, I suppose, of customizability.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to be mindful. I did note that I think the contributors empty is supposed to be contributing empty. So that's one thing that I think I messed up when taking notes there. I think that's less contentious to have a contributing empty file in your repo versus contributors. You may not, especially when you're starting a new package, you're probably not going to have a lot of contributors. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't know how much more time we want to spend on this. I know.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's probably time to move on since we've spent half the meeting and have a few other things.
But we should at least establish next steps. Do we think that we want to? What do we think we want to do next? Is it what's in the next steps list here?
I think
did we already just do that?
like finding, you know, agreeing on what's the minimal set to start with, right? Because I guess that can be added to over time, right?
Yeah, totally.
So it's, you know, I would say let's start with the non-contentious stuff, just create that list, and then we could actually start building the tool, right?
If people aren't opposed, I have technically already started building the tools. So,
right.
I mean, I have like 3 or 4 of the primary components I think already done. So if we wanted maybe like how much technical involvement people want, maybe we can have another sync like we did last week and really nail down how the, you know, how the code will look, what components we'll have. So I'd be happy to lead that effort if that's seems like a good next step.
Sounds good.
Yeah, whoever wants to join that band call, we could try to set it up this week if you've got time left.
Yeah, I think I do. And yeah, if we can just make an issue. I'll open an issue right after the call.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Okay, so basically, I've just written out of band call and technical structure, etc. Wes will set up through issue after call. Okay, anything else before we move on? If not, let's move on to the next issue, which is Docs PR landing without outstanding reviews. I think, Glenn, you'd opened that one.
Yeah, so Dominic has said, you know, after we landed it last week and we pressed merge, he said, I'm not quite so sure we should have done that. And then we discussed, well, actually, what should we do in this circumstance? So we wrote this up, and it's there. I've modified the wording in the contributions. And I think we have a reasonable way around what to do, noting that this is not an effort to get around trying to get consensus, but what do you do when you think you've addressed everything, but one of the reviews is still outstanding and that reviewer hasn't replied and you can't contact them. And Dominica said, well, we need to start a countdown and make every possible effort. So we're just writing that up and codifying it so that we know what to do. Because in reality, we should have thought of this, because this is not at all uncommon, especially in August.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it. There's quite a few approvals, a couple suggestions, but I don't see, does anybody have any like objections or comments other than like, is it, yeah, are there any objections, or is what's there looking pretty good to people?
I mean, I already approved, so I won't say too much more. I think it's also a big part of it was just understanding like the spirit of the group as well.
Yeah.
And I think to Glenn's point, you know, this isn't an end run around anything. Obviously, you know, if maybe this was like an application with like, you know, there's context, right? Documentation versus workflows versus, you know, like production code. Obviously, you might have different stages of leniency, but you know, I think it's just setting some initial groundwork. Because I often, I guess maybe being somewhat newer, you know, I definitely want to err on the side of caution before merging or doing anything to rub anybody the wrong way. But at the same time, you know, it's hard to sit and see work kind of sit around for a really long time that, you know, is the function of the group at the same time.
So let's perhaps just leave it a little bit longer and give some other people a chance to reply. I always put up work and then don't look at the comments straight away, but that's, you know, that's kind of hard, and then you do look, because you just can't help yourself. We'll leave that. Once we get that done, I can start on the CI/CD pipeline work, which will refer back to the testing docs, which I promised to refer them, interlink them. To Dominic has had some questions raised on that. That's why we'll do next once this gets landed.
Okay. Do you have a target in mind for when to land?
Well, we've got is if we follow the progress in 14 days, so we've got another.
Yes, okay.
So we can probably do it at the next meeting. Yep. Like we are writing the rules on landing, so we should follow them, I suppose.
Absolutely. Okay.
The main thing adding it to this agenda was just to at least bubble it up once to agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the next issue, which is adding package maintenance to Node.js website number 402. I'm not sure there's too much to discuss, I guess. RX Marbles is working on a description for the website. There were a few questions. Discussion back and forth. Are people okay with where that's at? I think I can paste into the chat. This was kind of the suggestion I'd made for the short description on the website. I guess the comment was what we had on our README was fine for the README, but not necessarily so great for a fit there.
Yeah, my understanding was mostly just to maybe add a more, I guess, like catchier or more concise, like top level summary of the group that could also be reused in like a different context, like on the website. So if we're going to write it for the website, maybe add it to the docs or vice versa. But I think it was just like 1 or 2 line sentence to really sum up the group, you know, as opposed to changing anything that's there.
Yep.
Which I have no problem with.
So any comments, questions on that one? Things we should comment back into the issue. Okay, let's move on to the next one, which is package compliant versus PKGS support. This is number 401. Dominicus, you opened this one.
Yeah, I was just going through various repositories in Node.js organization to check the Travis YAMLs there, and I spotted this repo, I guess, and yeah, just wondering what's the status there. But I think in the discussion in the issue, the agreement is that, yeah, the assumption is that pkgjs/support takes over, which means we should probably, as long as we have feature parity, I don't know, we should probably archive this repo. I don't know what's the, like, I haven't looked at the code or anything, just figured that there's some duplication. So if we think that at pkgjs/support takes over everything there, I guess there's 2 options, or I guess we can do a combination of the 2. We should probably archive the Node.js/package compliant in GitHub, and then we should do something about it on NPM. And on NPM, I guess we can release a major release which just calls pkgjs/support and then deprecate the package.
That all sounds reasonable to me. Any comments, suggestions? PKG, I guess package compliant is in which repo?
It's in Node.js/package compliant.
Ah, okay, so it's in the Node.js org versus the right.
Yep.
Okay. We probably also need to do a release of the PKGS support because I don't think the one that's published is anywhere near up to date.
When can we get that to a phase?
I know. Every time I hear those things, I'm like, automation.
Yep.
Sorry, is the licensing of that package okay?
Which one?
Of package compliant? So it's a MIT license, but copyright manual, is that normal?
That's
Yeah, I
quite
think it
common.
was just forked over, and yeah, I think it initially started out under. It got transferred to the Node.js organization from Manuel's profile, I think. So.
Okay.
I've seen quite a few that are basically that, and then it gets added, like it's copyright the original author and then authors.
Yeah, so that's sort of what I'm looking for, is like, and contributors.
Right.
So yeah, and just want to make sure that that's set up in a way that any contributions are going to be
Yep.
made under that understanding and licensing, right?
That one is that's the one we're talking about archiving anyway, but.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So anything else you wanted to talk about on that one, Dominicus?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Yes, it's just a matter of doing it. I don't have the permissions to publish there, so I guess we'll need to organize the manuals.
Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which is draft text for support info blog. We talked about this last time. I had the action to write up the draft blog, which I've done. And I guess just wanted to see if there's any more feedback, comments, and are we ready to go ahead and work with the foundation to get this published? Have people had a chance to take a look at it yet?
I'm just reading it now. I
Okay.
unfortunately haven't.
We'll give everybody a minute or two to read through it.
Maybe it's just as a point of order while everybody's doing that. Is it common, or I guess what's, this is just more for my own education around like blogging and promoting Node.js. Is it common to use like an external provider for like blogging and stuff, as opposed to say like blogging through the Node.js website itself, or like a non-third party?
For something like this, we quite often use like whatever the foundation was using Medium, and there was like a Node.js account for that.
Cool. Yeah, I imagine it probably lets you move faster than going through the website docs or anything like that. But yeah, I was just kind of curious, just because I know that there's, you know, often a lot of discussion around, you know, even earlier, not coupling to a particular platform, but I guess sometimes that's inevitable if you want to get stuff done.
Yeah, it's whatever there's a stream of kind of these things going out from different things, and it's good to have them sort of in a common place.
Is there ever any, I won't take up too much more time. Is there ever any value in maybe like archiving everything in Markdown, even if it's not like, in case Medium ever goes away, does all your content,
Right.
like at least then you'd have a Markdown backup somewhere that you could use to source to other platforms, even if you don't turn that Markdown into a website itself.
Yeah, I don't think we've thought about doing that. It kind of makes sense. Like we could take this text, well, it'll be in an issue, but we could also put it in a, like we could start putting have a blogs directory if we wanted to in the repo and land things there.
Yeah, be, yeah, interesting direction to take with Node.js. Oh, yeah, at least Node.js specific, where, you know, that kind of mantra of own your own content. I mean, use other platforms, but the content's always yours at the end of the day, somewhere safe. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
I guess the one thing I'm looking for here as well is in this draft, Michael, is
Mhm.
maybe feedback still, like an opportunity for feedback.
Right. So where, like, does that fit into the call to the action at the
Yeah,
end?
kind of like, I would say that would be the first thing you'd want to do. Like if you read this, the support spec or schema, and you disagree with it, you know, harshly, like if you think it's something's wrong, then that's the first thing we want you to do is give us
Right.
feedback. And
So how
then,
about like here, right?
yeah,
Uh,
because for some folks, this might be the first time they hear about this, and
that sound good?
perfect, yeah. And then just, I guess, the link to it.
Yeah, good. Okay, so let me. We put that anywhere because that's a very good. This one here, right?
Perfect.
Okay.
Sounds pretty good though.
Any other comments, suggested tweaks that we can make? Any objections to us moving forward to publishing it?
None.
Okay. I'll take agreement in the meeting. We can move to publishing. Okay. Sounds good. So let's move on to the next issue then. Communicating that only the latest version of a major release line is supported. This is 393, and I think Dominicus, were you the one who opened that? Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, there's some actions to be taken there. I did take one of the two that we discussed last time around. I have a pull request open in CI config Travis. I appreciate some reviews there, just updates the README files.
Okay, anything else we should talk about?
Somebody could go and look at that.
We're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah.
Dominic is.
And then, yes, sorry, I was just saying that I don't think there's any further actions there right now, just.
Okay. Okay, so you'd like, the main thing is for people to review and approve.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on to the next one then, is suggest ignoring a vulnerability by the package maintainer. This is number 386. We have 7 minutes left. I'm thinking this one is going to take a little bit more time to get through. We had planned to try and get to a meeting where we had Liran from SNCC, some people from NPM. I think Darcy, now that you're back, maybe it would make sense to try and schedule that for next meeting. Does that make sense for people?
Yeah, it would give it some more time as well.
Okay. And yeah, we'll sort of make that the first one we get into to make sure we have a fair amount of time.
One thing that a few of the other groups do is have like alternating or sporadically scheduled deep dives. And
Yep.
I feel like we almost did a deep dive at the first half of this meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And then this topic, I think, will also require that level. Do we want to maybe just break it out into something not on the regularly scheduled meeting and do a deep dive? So I think there's a lot to talk about with this. If we have everybody in the room together, you know, I imagine.
Okay, so that would make sense to me, and maybe then we can actually pick it. You know, it might be easier to find a time where we get the key people available as well. Okay, so I'll take the action to send out a doodle to set up and find a time to do that.
Tell me if you don't like my strategy that I just opened the issue for scheduling a technical plan meeting for that. I just used reactions. Anyway, if you
Seems
only
okay.
people, it seems like the doodle is pretty heavyweight for these anyway.
True, there's only a couple people who aren't normally here that we can try and figure out. Deep dive to. Okay, so let's move on to the next one then, which is the PKGS org for workgroup supported tooling. That one we did talk about briefly yesterday. There were a few things that we were doing. I know Dominicus was doing a few things.
I think I added the relevant people.
Right, there's a few reviews we talked about that need to be landed. I see that at least that one has. That's closed, so I guess what's left is the question. I guess we just need to do a final, like, are we done? And then I guess then it will be give access as per like what it means to be integrated into the node.js org. So I don't think there's anything too much more to talk about on that one, is there?
Just I'll note, Glenn, your invitation expired. Do you want to send it? This video looks frozen.
Yeah, sorry, Dominic, because you've broken up the last minute or so.
Yeah, having connection issues. You're into the, or just gonna resend that now.
Okay, well, we're just 2 minutes left. So the next one is next steps on support levels and package.json. I think we already talked about the next step, which was the blog post. And then we have a few more things that we could do.
Once we have the plan for the create PKG, we can also discuss how we want to get the scaffolding there done. That would be a good next step, because that I think would be either that's probably the best option, but either that or like maybe some of the GitHub stuff, like we're going to need one first trial for like, here's this thing defined somewhere else. How does it work
Yep.
with a package generator? We'll need something, and the support data is definitely the most near and dear to this group's heart, I think.
Yeah, I think it would be a great one to, you know, basically it would be like add the generation piece into the support tool and see how it interact. Like, how do we make the two of them work together? Okay. So that's the end of time. Is there anything, and the agenda, is there anything else that people want to talk about?
It's Glenn here. If I could have you, Michael and Wes, just for a minute at the end, off after we finish on another subject.
Okay, I do have another meeting, so
Oh,
I can only give you like a minute.
okay. A minute should be enough.
Okay. Okay, so let's close out for today. I will stop the stream.